Hey guys, Rob here with McDojoLife. In today's McDojo Breakdown, we're going to be talking about whether or not your school could possibly be a McDojo. Let's break it down. On this page, we typically deal with McDojos, or fraudulent martial arts schools, con men and pedophiles, and the real dirty side of martial arts. But what is a McDojo? Well, that can actually be quite tricky and complicated, as the term McDojo is something that's been splattered all over the world, and it means something different to different people. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Google, and let's just look at the first couple definitions of what they consider a McDojo. The first thing that pops up on Google is from Rational Wiki, and it says, a McDojo is a pejorative term in the same vein as a McMansion and a McChurch, referring to martial arts academies, generally located in the Western world, which rather than being honestly committed to teaching students, are instead concerned primarily with amassing profit. There are a few things on here I just definitely don't agree with. First one being generally located in the Western world. Anybody who's followed this page for more than even a day probably knows that that's 100% not true. McDojos are located all over the world. Wherever there is room for a con man to exist, a con man will exist. So just located in the Western world, I don't agree whatsoever. A prime example of somebody who's been fighting this, not just in the Western world, is a guy named Xu Xiaodong. Xu Xiaodong has been in China beating the ever-living shit out of absolutely every fake martial arts master he can find, and he's been working them over. The next one on here I don't agree with is primarily concerned with profit. If you open up a martial arts school and you're collecting fees and you're getting paid for the work that you're doing, which I think that you should, then you should be concerned with profit. Should it be the only thing you're concerned with? Of course not. But should it be something you should be concerned with? Yes. Because if you're a good martial arts instructor and you're broke, eventually you go out of business, and now we have one less good martial arts instructor. Also, it helps you pay your employees. It helps you pay for equipment to make sure your equipment is up to date and safe. It helps you pay for all the supplies that you need, keep your lights on, etc., etc. So yes, should you be concerned with getting profit if you run a for-profit business? Yes, of course you should. Should it be your only concern? No. Let's go to the next definition. It's right under the people also ask button here, and it says, a McDojo is a school that teaches a watered down and impractical form of martial arts in the name of making money. We have some disagreements here. Watered down. Watered down as compared to what and for what? Not everyone who joins a martial arts school is joining a martial arts school specifically for self-defense. And I know that sounds very strange, but there's a lot of reasons people join martial arts and eventually stay with martial arts simply because they can no longer be competitive. Maybe they have other things they're getting out of it, such as friends. Maybe they wanted a mentor. Maybe they want to stay in shape. Maybe they want to lose weight. Could be a lot of things. And then yes, they will also learn forms of self-defense, but not everyone wants to learn how to punch people in the face. As weird as that sounds, it's just simply not the truth for everyone. Some people, that's the only reason they're doing it. But eventually we're all going to get older and our bodies aren't going to do the same things they used to be able to do. So why would you continue martial arts if it's no longer just to be able to defend yourself? Think about it. Making money. Here it goes again, right? People keep trying to make making money in the martial arts industry a bad thing. And what happens is you wind up getting martial arts instructors who don't go out of their comfort zone. They don't go out to try to learn anything about martial arts business and how to be successful in that. And then what winds up happening is their doors wind up closing, and once again, one less great martial artist. One last thing that's on here that's kind of interesting is impractical is a word that it's used. Impractical form of martial arts. Well, if it's impractical to who? Because you have to remember, every person who joins the martial art is going to be joining for a different reason. Whereas one guy, the only reason that he's doing it is because he wants to learn self-defense, and it might be impractical for him, especially let's say, for instance, you join a cardio kickboxing club and you're learning how to lose weight and you're learning some basic kicks and punches, but you're not really learning self-defense. That's okay as long as they're not teaching it that way. So for that guy, it's impractical. But for the guy who's looking just to lose weight and learn how to throw a few basic kicks and punches, it's practical for him. So it's very important that we start drawing these lines. Let's do one more. Let's see what Urban Dictionary has to say. Urban Dictionary's definition, one of their definitions, because they have many, this is just the one that happens to be right there on Google. It says, McDojos are schools that are run and owned for the purpose of making money. Typically, you are able to get a black belt in less than 2 to 3 years. So you already know I'm going to have issues with it saying with the purpose of making money. If you don't want to make money, don't open a for-profit business. If you do, then you better be good at it, because if you're not, you're going to go out of business. Here's one that's a little different on here from the other two, though. Typically, you're able to get a black belt in less than 2 to 3 years. This should be more of a guideline than a rule. And in all honesty, it should be more of a personal guideline than a rule. Because let's think about it. There are a lot of people who are really good at martial arts who got their black belts very quickly. A lot of jiu-jitsu practitioners are like, oh man, they'll get a black belt in like 2 to 3 years. That's ridiculous. Well, let's name off a few people who are amazing at jiu-jitsu who got their black belts very quickly. Caltera, he got his black belt in 3 years. BJ Penn got his black belt in 3 years. Gio Martinez got his black belt in 3 years. Richie, the Boogeyman Martinez, got his black belt in just under 4 years. So if you're going to allow that to be okay, and that's okay in your book, then it's a guideline, not a rule. I know what you're thinking. Rob, well, if you don't agree with any of those definitions, then what do you think a McDojo really is? Well, let's get into the meat and potatoes. I have 5 very specific rules on what I consider a McDojo, and they might be surprising to you. So let's go ahead and cover those. 1, pedophiles. 2, lying about your belt rank and fight record. 3, unsafe training practices and cult-like behavior. 4, no-touch knockouts or mislabeling techniques. And finally, 5, shady business practices. Let's go and cover that first rule, pedophiles. Why is that a rule, you ask? Why is that something that's even on this particular list? Well, because it is rampant in the martial arts industry. Every week I do a McDojo news story on Wednesdays, and I typically go back through the previous week and I look through news stories to find out what might be relevant to this page. And every week, it never fails, there is a story about a martial arts instructor who molested a child. The martial arts industry has no regulating body to it. So there are a lot of martial arts schools out there that don't actually even require a background check in order to be a martial arts instructor, or the pedophile themselves open up their own martial arts studio just so that way they can have access to children. You're probably thinking, well, if they were convicted pedophiles, wouldn't their access to children be taken away simply because they were convicted? Well, you would be right, but unfortunately there are a lot of people out there who have taken plea deals and still have access to children. One such person is David Arnbeck, who molested a 15-year-old girl in his home and took a plea deal and is still allowed to be around children, still allowed to have access to kids. He runs 3 martial arts schools called Warriors Cove. Those martial arts schools are still active today. Another instructor who molested multiple children over the course of several years is a guy named Lauren Kopp, who ran a place called Dojo Pizza in St. Louis. Now, Lauren Kopp had a dojo / pizzeria in which he had a lot of kids who were going there who were impoverished. And a lot of parents were kind of fooled into believing that this dude was doing a great thing for the community. Unfortunately, what he was doing was grooming and molesting these children over a long period of time, and also eventually getting the parents convinced to allow him to adopt the kids because he said that he'd be able to give them a better environment to live in. So yeah, it's a big one on the list, and it's something I've been trying to fight for a long time. Let's go to rule number 2, lying about your belt rank or your fight record. A lot of people ask me my resume, what my credentials are, how long I've been training. Well, that's pretty simple to cover. I've been in the martial arts industry for 24 years of my life. I started when I was 12 years old. I am a 3rd-degree black belt in karate, a 3rd-degree black belt in a weapon system called Lisajodo, which is a weapon system not too many people really have heard of. It basically just means I'm good at nunchucks. My instructor was Master Lee Barden. He is right there. Rest in peace. He passed away a few years ago. I am a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a 6-0 amateur boxer, a 4-2 amateur kickboxer. I was on an international martial arts team called Team Full Circle, where we traveled internationally, and I kickboxed and did martial arts for about 2 years under that particular team. Then I have been doing McDojoLife now for about 9 years and martial arts business consulting for about 10 years. At the end of the day, when it comes to me, super mediocre. I don't think I'm the best in the world. I don't think I'm some kind of badass. There are plenty of people who can kick my ass, and at the end of the day, I don't give a shit. I love the martial arts, and that's my resume. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who will lie about their resume. They'll pad that resume to make themselves seem so much more important. And if they're willing to lie about their belt rank and their fight record, chances are good they'll definitely lie about absolutely anything. How often does this happen? all the time. It is all over the world. Here's one example, another video that we did previously about a guy named Deepak Rao who claimed to be a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt but had absolutely no clue how to implement any of the techniques that are basic techniques, by the way, and didn't even know the standard names for those techniques. When I had followed up with this dude's instructor in which he had claimed to get a black belt from, that guy wrote me an email back saying specifically it was a lie, that this dude was not a black belt under him. How is this dangerous, you might ask? Deepak Rao was in charge of training the army in India. In India, this dude's shooting is horrible, and everything that he was teaching was based off of a lie for people who might have to put their lives on the line in order to entrust that what this guy taught will work for them. So definitely, if you start catching people who are lying about their belt rank or their fight record, run. Next one, unsafe training practices and cult-like behavior. You've probably seen some videos that we posted on our Instagram of some pretty seriously gross and disgusting unsafe training practices. We've shown videos of children getting beaten up, just straight up beaten up by grown adults. You see this a lot in Indonesia, where a part of their training is basically just being brutally beaten by the instructors or other students. For what? For toughness? It's not going to make you tough. What it's going to wind up doing is going to make you more susceptible to just accepting that type of behavior that's coming towards you. A lot of instructors go, yeah, this is hardcore training. This is like in the streets. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It gets people killed. One such incident we posted on our Instagram page was two people boxing. One person got knocked out and hit the back of their head on concrete and died. For what? For training? That's ridiculous behavior. Another version that you might see sometimes is people getting beaten with sticks when they're not doing something correctly. Another such version of training is like tenaga dalam training that you'll see in Indonesia, where people are getting rocks tossed at them. Or another such form of this training might be everybody standing in line with their hands down and allowing their instructor to just tee off on their head. For what? It's not going to help you. It's not going to benefit you in any way. It is super dangerous and get you hurt or killed. Cult-like behavior, which goes with this, by the way, because that's very cult-like in itself, you'll actually see this in every martial art. Whenever an instructor is trying to control you, not only inside the classroom, but also outside of the classroom, that should be a humongous red flag for you. There's a term called the creonte. I'm not Portuguese, so my accent's not going to be very good when I pronounce that, so I'm sure I butchered it. But it basically just means traitor. You'll see a lot of martial arts schools that won't allow you to go train elsewhere. They don't want you to go to another seminar because it falls under some other school and they think that it's disrespectful. They don't want to see you go train with your homie across the street because it's another school and you can only train in their school. That is ridiculous nonsense. You are a customer paying a price. You're paying a fee. You're training there. It doesn't mean you're going to leave them just because you decide that you're going to go to another school one night. It just means you're simply out there trying to better yourself. And you should be able to have access to other schools if you feel like you want to go train there. If you want to go pay the open mat fee to go train one time. If a martial arts school owner is trying to tell you that you're not allowed to go train somewhere else, or they ostracize you or try to label you as a traitor simply because you're not doing what they want you to do outside of the school, you should probably run. Rule number 4, no touch knockouts and mislabeling techniques. Now, you would think that this is a little bit more common sense, right? No touch knockouts. Of course, I'm never going to fall for stuff like that. Unfortunately, a lot of people do, and it happens over a long period of time. Don't think about this as day one, you're going to walk in and all of a sudden, whoa, I learned how to knock someone out with my chi powers. It's not usually how it works. Typically, you're groomed over a long period of time until they kind of indoctrinated you into this cult-like behavior where all of your friends are there. Maybe you consider this your second home, like your family. You have utmost admiration for your instructor. And then once they have all of those things in place, now it's time to hit you with a moment of truth. Are you going to believe the nonsense and then be able to stay in the fold and continue to be a part of this group that you put so much time and effort into? Or are you going to make the decision to leave and then be ostracized by all of these people that you consider close? It's actually a lot more complicated than it looks on the surface. Mislabeling techniques is something that you'll see quite often. I don't think that there's a problem if you want to learn a martial art that might not be effective. Who cares? Everyone's reasoning for joining a martial arts school is completely different and subjective to their own goals. If you go to a martial arts school and your doctor says, yo, I need you to lose 30 pounds, then that might be your goal. And you might not care if you could fight your way out of a wet paper bag, right? Another person's goal might be they just want a social atmosphere where they can have friends and they can talk to people. That's fine as well. Nothing's wrong with learning a martial art that might not be effective as long as they are not lying to you. Once they start to lie to you, that's when you start to have major issues. If they're saying that this is going to be combat effective and it's tried and true not to be, that's mislabeling a technique. Saying that you can knock someone out with your mind when you clearly can't do that, that's mislabeling. Or something as simple as going to a cardio kickboxing program and you're there and they've kind of sold you on the idea that it's going to help you with your self-defense more than it really will. That's mislabeling a technique. Let's say you go to a Taekwondo school and you want to be a stunt performer and you start learning acrobatic kicking. There's nothing wrong with that. They're not mislabeling it. They're not telling you you're going to be the next Raymond Daniels because you just learned how to do a 540. What they are going to do is they're going to get you in shape. They're going to get you closer to your individual goal. That's fine. And finally, number 5, shady business practices. Something that you'll see quite often with people who are trying to label something as a McDojo is they'll call it a shady business practice for one reason or another. They'll call it a belt factory. It's too quick to get your belts. They'll say that it's too expensive or they're ripping you off. This might not be the case. Expensive to you is subjective, right? What's expensive to one person might not necessarily be expensive to someone else. There are people out there who are going, oh, they're ripping you off. They're charging you $100. I only charge you $25. Well, sometimes you get what you pay for. It will be shady if they lie to you up front. If they say, this is the cost, and then all of a sudden you're going, okay, well, it's $100 a month. I'll just toss a number out there. And then you realize there's extra fees that keep piling on that they didn't discuss with you, belt testings that you charge for all the time, extra equipment that you're going to need, extra uniforms you're going to need. If none of that was discussed beforehand, then that's shady. There are people out there who will say long-term contracts are a McDojo. That's not necessarily true. It's up to you as a consumer to make sure you understand what you're about to get yourself into. Now, there is a line. I think that anything past a year is a little shady because the average martial artist drops out at about a year and a half. This is just facts. But if you're committed to something, you should have no true issues signing something like that. But obviously, I think that there should be clauses that will allow you to get out of the contract for extenuating circumstances such as your health, moving, your job, things like that. Or even just a 30 days notice, which I think is respectful in any case, or a 60 days notice, or some type of a notice should be fine. But just because someone has a contract, it doesn't mean that they're shady. It just means that they're probably smarter at business. And that means their people are probably going to get paid. And their light bills are going to get paid. And they'll have new equipment. If you don't like that, definitely there should be some clauses in there for month to month. But I do think a month to month should be more expensive if you're smart at your business. Because it's not guaranteed. And nothing is guaranteed. But at the end of the day, it will help you in your business. Another extreme example is actually something that happened in my hometown where there was a martial arts instructor who, when people were late on their bills, he actually went door to door and strong-armed them, literally threatened them with physical violence if they did not pay on time. That guy was a douche. The rules here are pretty simple. It's not a list of 1,000 things. It's 5 simple things that you should be looking out for to make sure that your school is not a McDojo. Pedophiles, lying about belt rank or fight record, unsafe training practices or cult-like behavior, no-touch knockouts or mislabeling techniques, shady business practices. If your school doesn't fall under those particular things, you're probably good to go. If they fall under those particular things, not only is your school probably a McDojo, but it's also probably doing some really illegal shit. Everybody who ever does these lists always has like a ton, right? Well, this and this and this. What I'm saying is these are our rules for this particular page. These are what we're calling a McDojo. For you guys, it might be something else. If it is to you at the end of the day, then it's important to you and maybe you should trust your instincts. But the reason I really bring this up and I bring this to the forefront is because I think a lot of schools are mislabeled. I think there are so many schools that just do an art that you don't do, and then they're automatically called a McDojo just simply because of the art. Not because that they're a bad school or they have a bad instructor. Look, there are bad instructors in every martial art, period. But at the end of the day, what your goals are should be top priority for you. And what martial art school you go to, you should be able to be aware that these particular problems do occur and you should be looking out for them. I'd really like to know what your thoughts are. This is definitely a hot topic when it comes to this particular page is McDojos. These are what we call McDojos. Have you ever been a part of a McDojo? Has this something you've had a problem with? Do you know of a McDojo that falls under these particular categories? If you do, I'd like to hear about it in the comment section. As always, thank you all for the likes, comments, shares, subscriptions, and all other crap that people online tell you to do. Keep the martial arts legit.